technical difficulties, as you know, it's actually fitting with the social media aspect of it, right? So, want to go ahead and get started. I'm Aaron Gregory. I'm the Chief of Diversity for Arlington Public Schools. We're actually here today to have a dialogue and a conversation with you all in terms of social justice, activism, citizenship, social media, how all that aligns with your voice. One of the things we know now is that 90% of students between the age of 13 and 17 are on social media. So we want to have the conversation today about how do you engage with active citizenship, and I'm going to define the active citizenship for you today. So active citizenship actually involves one's involvement in their local community and democracy, from the municipal to the national level. For example, a campaign to clean up your streets or to educate young people about democratic values, skills, and participation. That's the definition of active citizenship. So we want to make sure, as Virginia residents, as students of the Virginia education system, and one of the 5 C's that they have is citizenship, is that we're actually participating within citizenship, that we're doing it responsibly, and that you all have the platform for your student voice to be heard. So today I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for today, and her name is Lynn Borton. Lynn is a great friend of mine, and she actually is with a radio station here locally in Arlington, and she's going to moderate. So Lynn, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you here today. This is going to be a conversation about curiosity and citizenship. And I know you thought you were coming for something about social media, but actually social media is just another way of telling the world who you are and what matters to you, and learning those things and seeing those things about others as well. And we approach that with curiosity, and it's an important way to show up as active citizens, as Aaron has just described. And so we've got this amazing panel of people who have gotten curious about the things that, they feel passionate about, and then have used social media in constructive and responsible ways to move those issues forward as active citizens. So we're going to do a quick introduction, like 45 seconds each. And I'm going to start with you, Jimena.
Hello. So my name is Jimena Hartzog, and I am a native of Chile, Santiago, Chile, and I am the founder of a technology company called Fund to Action based in Arlington, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. Blaine, you're next.
Hi, I am Blaine Shigeta. I am a rising junior at Washington Liberty. I am 16 years old, and I'm a co-founder of Generation Round 5.
Great, welcome. Yolandi, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Hi, everybody. My name is Yolandi Quinana. I'm the co-founder of Arlington for Justice.
Cool. Eric.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Eric Troy, founder and CEO of Aficionado based in Columbus, Ohio. I work with students who are interested in going into sports management and entertainment industry, and glad to be a part of the conversation today.
Great. So this session is not about a particular worldview. It's not about a particular political angle. This is about how we choose to show up as citizens, and how and where and with whom we invest our time and attention, because time and attention, that's like the most valuable thing we have. You can replace stuff, you can replace money, you can never replace your time. So it's precious. And in the APS vision to be an inclusive community that empowers all students to foster their dreams, explore their possibilities, and create their futures, we're talking about how we use our time and attention and show up as citizens. It's another way of talking about being an empowered, active citizen. So we want you to be engaged and to use your power to have a real impact on the world for causes that matter to you, whatever they may be. And there are two values that we talk about in APS. One is inclusivity, strengthening our community by valuing people for who they are, nurturing our diversity, embracing contributions of all students, families, and staff, and integrity, building trust by acting honestly, openly, ethically, and respectfully. And respect is something that kind of gets wonky with social media, right? So we want to talk about how to show up in a respectful place in dialogue through social media. So we're going to explore that vision through our relationship with social media today. And it's kind of hard to imagine the world without social media. So much of the information we're exposed to comes through social media. And how we even think about citizenship is shaped by social media literally every day. So we want to think about, like, how can we bring curiosity to that? How do we be curious about the issues that are emerging around us, curious about our own feelings about those issues, curious about how others think and feel about those issues and how they show up on social media. And then, how we want to show up and what we want to do with our time and attention. I happen to be a big fan of curiosity. My radio show was called Choose to Be Curious. So I want to invite you to be curious in this session as well. I want to invite you to ask questions and share your thoughts. You can do that by raising your hand. Do that off the bottom of your screen, or in the chat. You can type comments on the sides, and we're going to encourage you to ask questions, reflect on what you're hearing. So I want to start actually with a little easy dry run on that, either with a show of hands or chatting into the chat text. Where do you think most of the world's activism comes from? Take a guess. Where do we think it comes from? Go ahead and put something in the chat. There's no right and wrong answers. We're just taking a guess on what we think it is. And I will tell you, if I didn't know the answer to this when I first learned it yesterday. So Aaron, have we got anybody taking a guess?
Not yet. So we may want to keep that before I start calling on students.
All right, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But I'm going to turn to Jimena, because as a woman in science and technology, it's actually something of a rarity, a real special asset here in Arlington. And you've actually done some research on this question of who innovates and who makes change happen. What can you tell us about what you've learned and who the true activists are?
Yeah, so actually the activists historically have been youth, and in the past it was mostly like college students, but lately in the past year, especially since October of last year, when we saw a tremendous number of kids activating all over the world, from Hong Kong to Colombia, Lebanon and everything in between, we saw that number going down a lot in age, and most of the activists now are in middle school and high school. So that's really, really amazing to have, and it makes sense because a third of the world is made by youth. It's actually 26% of the world is under 15, and a little bit over the number is, about a third is, kids that are under 18 years of age. You can move the slides. And so as you see there, and here in the US, we have 74 million youth, which is about 4 times, the number of people that live in my native country, Chile. So we could fill Chile 4 times with just young people, which would be amazing. And you hear all the time about digital natives. So that's what makes this group so special, is that all of you were born with internet and with all of the social media that we see today. In fact, the internet is 45 years old and TikTok is 13 years old. A lot of people think that TikTok was created yesterday, and it's 13. So that means that you have been born during that time frame. And like I said before, most of the kids in the past used to be engaged more in, activities in activism during college. Most of the civil rights leaders of the 60s were in the universities, but today you see them reacting even at age young as 12, 13 years of age to everything that we see around. So this is very encouraging to all of the adults to know that the future that we have in front of us is going to be formed really by very young people who are very active today. Also, something very important to know is that even though you see lots of these faces all over the internet that are leading protests or leading efforts you do not need to be like them. You have to just believe in yourself and know that a lot of these faces were someone like you at one point too. In fact, Greta used to, be very shy and had, learning disabilities. And over time, she came, the force that the voice that she has inside of her, that, the anger that she felt and frustration, pushed her to speak up. So don't feel like it's so easy for them to do it. And we're going to hear from an activist later today that is going to tell you how it is that voice that matters. And no matter what your opinion is, your opinion matters. Do not feel like you have to follow a pack. There are a lot of ways to engage. There's some examples here I'm going to show you of kids that are doing something, for example, now with COVID, that are, you see a lot of activism, but you also see behind the scenes work, people working and cleaning. We see here in Arlington with youth volunteering on weekends to clean up the parks, the trash. We also see a lot of youth involved in science and technology. We see, we have a slide here with some of the pictures of kids that have been really working really hard during the past months to join forces with NIH and other places at that young age to create a vaccine for COVID or medicine for some of the side effects that COVID has. So there's just so many ways to engage, and really the takeaway is that you have technology at your hands more than anyone had before. And that technology empowers you to do something, and you have the choice to use it just to play games or to do something else, which is fine to do during part of the day, but you can also use it to impact the world in a positive way. And normally, we all worry about sometimes you spending a lot of time on the internet, but you're spending that time anyway. I mean, research is showing us that most of you have your phones next to you, you're using it, at least 50% of the time. So during that time, use that as a vehicle for change, and you're going to get some tips today on how to do that.
Great. Thank you. What a great platform to start from. So, Blaine, I want to turn to you, because you're one of those young people that Jimena is talking about. You helped found Generation Ratify to help get the Equal Rights Amendment passed here in Virginia. Congratulations. That was a long time coming. What inspired you to do that? And how have technology and social media fit into what you've been doing?
Yeah, great question. I think like a lot of other youth activists in my generation, a lot of it was spiked by current events. I think that I was kind of slowly getting into activism in my middle school years. That's when I kind of became more exposed to kind of things I viewed as injustices, things that I viewed that could be improved in our country in general, in our world too. But I think I really began, being an actual activist or an active activist was after Parkland's shooting. I was able to organize with a lot of my fellow students at my middle school. I went to Gunston, and I organized about 3 marches, and I think that's when my activism really started. So that was my beginning into activism in general. But I started Generation Ratify about a year later, in late July of last year, I believe. And a lot of that kind of, again, was a long time coming. I've been talking about it for months, and I actually finally did it with a friend of mine, with a few friends of mine, that is. And really what it was that in Generation Ratify, it works towards the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. And something that really sparked that was that a lot of our peers didn't know what the ERA was, and I didn't know what the ERA was until I became interested in advocating for it. And even that was like through word of mouth, and the person that told me honestly found out with like a stroke of luck. So that was what kind of really had me diving into the ERA and ERA advocacy, was that in this kind of age of social media and where media and news is so accessible, there's something that is so present and something that's going to affect my life and many others' lives for the rest of our generations that come after us, very in a very impactful way. So we realized that is something that we need to address, and if we don't take it on, then who will? so that's how I kind of got into Generation Ratify. And I think that a lot of my peers and a lot of the people who are now part of the organization realized or felt that same almost offense that, like, why don't we know about this? Why isn't this a thing? Why is no one talking about it? Why did it die in the 70s? So that's what really got me, and lots of that mobilized a lot of other youth in Generation Ratify. And I think that part of that is also wanting to make our voices heard. I think that, like Jimena said, there are younger and younger generations becoming involved in activism, and that's because we are now more exposed to kind of the world now. We're not as sheltered as we used to be, and I think that our access to social media, our access to digital media, and just the way that media is being shared now, it's not just through television, it's not just through newspapers, it is everywhere around us, and it affects something that's happening on the national level, affects local communities and vice versa. So now that we're more interconnected than ever, I think that it is becoming more and more an issue for younger and younger people. So we really did want to make our voice heard and make it clear that, the ERA is something that we believe in, and that we believe that the ERA should continue to be advocated for, and it should become a thing. When we started in late July, we were able to do a lot of in-person activities. So that meant that we could do a lot of word of mouth. We could network. We could do relational networking to get people involved. But we had to cut that as soon as COVID hit us. So that became a much more of a serious social media push. We were always doing social media. We had a website. We had Instagram. We had a Twitter. We had a TikTok. We had a lot of different accounts. But we weren't as concerned with. We were pushing, but we weren't pushing as hard as we are now. And I think that we really needed that to really kind of take that to the next level and engage more people. And even through that, we've been able to kind of engage people in California, people, in Arizona, people across the country, because we are able to reach people much further away from us than just like Arlington through social media. And we took that more seriously when we really had to do it. And a lot of what our social media and just even using new technology to engage people had to do with finding new technology, because we knew that our generation could do it. We just had to make it accessible for them. We just had to make it like really easy and step by step, and people would figure it out. But we had to replicate in-person activities and make it as engaging in kind of a digital space. A lot of what we did was phone banking, text banking, advocacy, campaign work, and we used to do it in groups, and that's why we had such high engagement initially, because we used to do it in like group settings, and we used to bring food, and we used to like play a movie in the back or whatever it might be, and kind of have discussions. But that all went away, so we had to kind of figure out how to make the best of a Zoom call and how to make the best of, just an email blast, and just making everything more engaging, putting more attention to detail, and always kind of remembering that we're youth and we can use the things that we have in common with people in our generation and making things funny, and just keeping that lighter tone even when talking about serious topics, because we don't want to overwhelm people who are just getting started. And then as people get more comfortable, we can kind of focusing more and honing in more on details and kind of getting more to the hard-hitting things. But using social media and technology had definitely helped us grow. And I think that, I can talk for days about it, so I won't go on any longer, but it really is a really important tool for youth to really take advantage of, because I think we are the only generation that I think are so comfortable with it, and we can pick things up so quickly, and we shouldn't be afraid to use it. So, yeah.
Very nice. So what was the first thing that you did? Like, you started somewhere, right? What was the first thing that you started with?
The first thing that we started with, initially, our first like kind of social media tech thing was that we launched a website, and I think we probably had Instagram around the same time as well. And when we made our Instagram, we had to make sure that we wanted to represent ourselves and our values through every aspect of our social media. So whether it was who we were following, what we were posting, we really wanted that to be reflected. So we only followed similar organizations. Initially, it was just organizations that were local to Virginia and local to Arlington. And that way they kind of knew who we were. We were on their radars. They were on our radars. We were able to kind of partner with them, do events with them, have them repost some of our things, us repost some of their things, and kind of build partnerships and relationships with similar organizations. And then we also follow like members or whatever. And then in what we posted, we made sure that all of our posts, at first, I think one of the things that we really focused on was having a theme, kind of making sure that our posts were all consistent. They all look good. I will be very honest. I think that we have very short attention spans. I think we have I think Gen Z has an average attention span of like 8 or 15 seconds. I think it was 8 seconds. Very short. If it's not aesthetically pleasing, we're probably going to keep going. So just making sure that people, even if they just saw like our post for a second, they kind of recognize that as Generation Ratifies. So making sure we're recognizable, branding ourselves correctly, and making use of the partnerships and the relationships that we can build through social media. So yeah, and then always having events. I think that making things super accessible is another thing that we were focused on. So having link trees, having bit.lys, having everything be as like, everything should be kind of be done in like a 5-step process really quickly. And people would easily be able to get engaged, join a chapter, follow us, whatever it might be, and kind of do their own activism to their own like limits or whatever they felt most comfortable doing, but making sure that they can get engaged at any level they wanted to. So yeah, when we first got started, it was a website and Instagram, but we had to be very careful about how we started all of that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that really struck me was the idea that you started this with friends. You just kind of got this idea, and I'm interested if there are questions from our student participants. You know, you could be sitting in the lunchroom if it were a normal year, right? You'd be heading back to school together potentially with Blaine.
Yeah.
You know, if you were going to sit down in the cafeteria, what might you ask her about this? Do you have any questions for her before we move on? So I'm going to let those questions come in. And I'll promise that if questions don't get answered in this session, we'll follow up and make sure that they do get answered. Commit to always answering the questions that get asked. So if you think of something later on, be sure to drop it into the chat and we'll go. So Eric, you were stepping forward. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
No,
like,
you're good.
The language of somebody who got a question.
I'm actually, we have one question. So we have one question by Sabrina.
Oh, great.
She wants to know what has been the biggest challenge so far? Blaine, what was your biggest challenge so far with this work?
That's a good question. Lots of challenges. I would say getting used to being fully online was definitely one challenge. I'm trying to think of one that doesn't relate to COVID because that's just been so omnipresent. I think that initially we had to do a lot of traveling, so just coordinating travel. We went down to Richmond a couple times, so just making sure that people who weren't in Arlington, who weren't in DC, could still be engaged and could still like contact legislators, and making those really easy for them. I think that was just it, just making sure that it was really easy for people to get involved and engage and make actual change, but also feel like they're making the change. Sometimes you can do things, but you won't really feel it. So making sure that people felt that their actions amounted to something. And I think that can come in so many different shapes and sizes. So we just had to find what made the best sense for our base and our generation in general as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Great question. So Eric, I want to turn to you actually, because something that Blaine said really struck me, that they were really careful in their social media, that it was clear that it was Generation Ratify, right? And that's about building a brand, right? So you help students and student athletes build their brand, so people know who they are and what they stand for. And a lot of that is obviously done through social media, but I'm also wondering how you see that branding connecting back to an individual's values or their family values, or kind of their roots. So speak to that, if you would.
Yeah, Blaine just brought some great things up, and thanks so much again, Lynn, for the opportunity, and kudos to the students who took the time out to be engaged with this session. So glad you guys are part of this. But I do work with student athletes and professional athletes, and the most important thing is to let people know what you stand for and then what you don't stand for, regardless of your title in life. And the other thing for young people, never introduce yourself as what you do or who you are, but just as a person. With working with student athletes, doesn't matter the university that they're going to. Is in addition to that, is their morals and values and how they were brought up. And so they have to help student athletes look at researching Coca-Cola or McDonald's, or Blaine brought this up before, TikTok, or whatever the case may be. What's the best social media platform to be utilizing, but also to do research. And for the young people that's on the line now, is to find out, so who owns TikTok? How did the idea get established? Can I do an internship with TikTok here in the United States or in another part of the world? Who owns, of course, Facebook from an entrepreneur standpoint with Mark Zuckerberg and others? And And so important about this conversation is that, student athletes and professional athletes are now in that realm around social justice. All you guys are seeing this, be it with the name change of the Washington Redskins, the things that are happening in that particular space, but also just the social justice that's taking place in terms of now athletes coming out with their voices. Well, this started, again, back in middle school. We heard in our previous session that somebody had a great civics teacher, and it prompted the idea that I could actually make a difference. And so for the young people, along with student athletes, you don't have to wait till you become something. You're already something. You already can make a difference today. So don't wait till you think you need to become something or to have, a video or something to go viral. You're viral already because you woke up today. And at the end of the day, use your mouth and use your platform and use your actions now to create that brand. And in working with athletes and professional athletes primarily, is that I let them know that they are their own brand first. They enhance Nike, they enhance Adidas, they enhance, the endorsement that they're getting, or even before they go on First Take or Sports Center to do an interview. Have to make sure that they look a certain way and not they have to get dressed up, but what is the profile and the brand that they want to come across? And you're seeing this a little bit now with LeBron and some of the other players. They may have a T-shirt with a social justice message on, or not have a T-shirt or a baseball cap. But lastly, you want to always present yourself as a professional. And when you make a decision to be a part of something from a social justice standpoint, make sure you do the research first before you just like it because it's the popular thing to do. I've seen so many athletes get caught up in that where they just like something they didn't know the basis of who was writing it. And so the essence of that, again, just kind of going back to a lot of people don't know that Diddy, went back to Howard University and got his degree before he started to make music or while he was making music. Then Howard University invited Diddy back to be the commencement speaker for graduation. So that tells you something that when you take the time out to do your research, learn who the artists are. You guys can have to send me your playlist, but we probably listen to the same dope music if you want to. But that was a joke. But anyway, at the end of the day, make sure you do the research, with the professional athletes and student athletes that you're engaging with and looking up to, that they represent the values that you want to support.
So what I think is interesting about it, this kind of comes back to curiosity, right? It's sort of doing the research,
Right.
sort of figuring out, who's behind this, whose interests are being served by this.
Correct.
And do I want to, these particularly the high profile athletes, the influencers, they have a pretty awesome responsibility, right? And we have a responsibility to kind of make an active decision about whether or not this is something I want to associate myself with, right?
No, absolutely, Lynn. You're spot on. I think the other thing is that these athletes also are making decisions for their households. So they have to make a very cognizant decision. They're not just speaking because they play for a particular, sports team, but how's this going to impact their wife or husband or kids when their kids go to school the next day? And so they have to be really cognizant of coming out and support something that they feel very strong about or may disagree. And I use that word of disagreement. I think life is really about understanding other people's perspectives and not necessarily changing yours, but having a different perspective and learning from that person. And I think that's the space that we're in right now from a societal standpoint. I think that the high school students that you guys are on right now, you guys are at the forefront of that. You're our next leaders. You will literally be electing our next president and presidencies, if you will, in different capacities, or the next mayor, the next judges. So to Blaine and Sabrina and some of the other students that are on this call, I'm looking forward to reading and hearing about the impact you guys are having there in the Virginia market.
Very cool. So students, Eric is like a consultant. People pay him for the advice he's giving right now. Y'all want to get some free advice? You have a question you want to ask of him before we move on?
And I'm always available, students. If you don't want to do it now, I'll make myself available for you at any time. It's not a problem.
There you go. There you go. So if we don't have any questions, let me just check, Aaron, if we got any questions right now or not. Whoops, you're muted. Can't hear you.
trying to unmute.
There you go. No questions yet? Okay. Well, then I want to go to Yolandi because she's doing exactly what Eric is talking about. She is made this decision to mobilize on something that mattered to her, and she's doing the research. So Yolandi, your role with Arlington for Justice is to build engagement. It's to do what Blaine was talking about in terms of that sort of relational outreach, really working your networks, people you know, people you don't know yet, but who maybe share an interest. And part of that is about getting curious, right? About what does and doesn't work in doing that. And I wonder what lessons you've learned from doing this here in Arlington.
Yeah, and 100% right. Like my journey really started with feeling a certain way due to recent events, killings of Black people in the news, and I think I almost felt like I was going through a grieving process every time that happened, and I really had to dig deep within myself to say, you know, am I going to continue and go another year of just grieving, or am I actually going to do something? And like as an immigrant in this country, I think I've always struggled with speaking up, just because not feeling like there is 100% a place for me. And I can, like when I speak to my kids who are in middle school, they feel the same way because they feel like they're kids, right? So all that I can say to that is like really not letting anything stand in your way of getting something done. My first kind of way of activism happened 2 months ago, and it just started with a Facebook post. And that post was, I'm going to be marching from Shirlington down to Courthouse. Whoever wants to join me, let's go. And 200 people came to that. And none of them were people I even knew. And yeah, then the following week, it was another post. Again, like, I'm going to be marching. Join me if you see this as a cause that you want to fight for as well. And then 1,000 people came to that. And from that, it just became about really forming relationships with folks who are already doing this work. A lot of the people I didn't know any of the people that I know today. It was like a complete 180. But I've always believed that when you do something that matters to you, the right people will start to form around you. And that's really what happened when it came to creating Arlington for Justice, or even connecting with like elected officials like Delegate Alfonso Lopez, who wants to put bills forward that are really going to change things here in Arlington. So those people came out of me just kind of expressing my voice. And then it's just people with similar voices rallying around. So don't be afraid of like the voice that you have. 100% put everything that you're thinking, everything that you're feeling out there, and you'll really be surprised by what comes back. I think the biggest lesson for me has been to look at the other side of things. So in doing this work, like I had my certain views, but I had to kind of zoom out and take a step back and say, whoa, you know, there's another side to this, and be willing to listen to the other side. And I say that in reference to like conversations with the police chief and lieutenants and things like that, and trying to kind of help them reimagine a different way of policing in Arlington. Having to listen to them and understand how they think of things, how they make decisions, what all goes on in their surroundings at any given point in time, so that it's not just us saying, you know, we want this, but it's, you know, really working together with them. So yeah, that's been the biggest learning curve for me.
I like what you say about being curious about kind of other perspectives. that it's not so much necessarily that either of you is trying to convince the other to join your side, but that this idea that you can understand better and work towards solutions by being curious about perspectives that are really different from your own. And social media is one way of doing that, right? I mean, it's one way of actually getting exposed to the messages and the feelings and the branding of people whose thoughts are really different from our own. And I liked you kind of brought back to this whole thing where it just started with a single Facebook post. Like, that's the power of social media, right? It just one post, and there you go. So I want to ask you,
if I can add something to that. So the March of Washington, it took 20 years to organize, and it was mostly organized in physical meetings between many civil rights leaders. And the Women's March took 1 month to organize. And some of the founders never met in person until the day of the march. So I think it shows a lot the power that technology has today to remove the obstacles of organizing. And then to the point of looking at the other view that Yolanda talked about, I think it's extremely important. At Fund to Action, we made the decision to be agnostic in the way that sometimes people look at issues, and a lot of technologies take one side or the other. They may, take one party line, and we decided early on never do that, because we felt that it would be a very big mistake to stop somebody from speaking up on an issue that may be able to educate the other person on an issue, widen that view, which eventually will also make the solutions more accessible. So that's why I think having, what Yolanda said is extremely important, coming out from activists that they're willing to talk to the other side. And Martin Luther King was a very good example of that. He was the first one trying to speak to the other side, trying to understand where they were coming from. And I think that's the very beginning of a solution, by going across the aisle.
Nice. I'm wondering if the students have any questions, or whether you have shown up for any march or event or protest moved by someone's social media and an invitation. Has anybody had an experience of doing that they wanted to share? I'll say I've had that experience where people posted something that I didn't even know I was necessarily looking for, but that somebody posted something that's like, you know what, that speaks to me. I want to be there. I want to be a part of that. I want to show people that what they're doing matters, and I don't have to do anything other than simply put myself there and be present as a way of showing support. It was kind of a sort of a nice way to sort of test things out a little bit. But for me, those were all things that happened through things that people had promoted through social media. So it's definitely a good way to get people that you don't know yet, as I say. You may get to know them. I don't know how many of those 1,000 people you know now, Yolanda, that showed up for your march, but I'm willing to bet that there's a portion of them that have become a really important network for you. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of them we have over 200 volunteers on Arlington for Justice. A lot of them are volunteers. A few of them are on our steering committee. We have a steering committee of 9 people. And yeah, a lot of them have just kind of popped in when they see an opportunity to help us or give us ideas on where to go for an answer for this or for that, or to connect us to certain people. But I can definitely say that the majority of the people that came to the marches are still involved today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know, Blaine, you had talked actually about the sort of relational work and the importance of kind of cultivating those relationships with people. You do that in person, but now I know you didn't want to talk about COVID, but right, we can't not talk about COVID. It sort of forced you to use some of these technologies, right? And to use social media to build those relationships. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that like even like Yolanda was saying and Jimena was saying that sometimes just like a post on social media can really get something moving and started. I think we can see that through the March for Our Lives protest that was in DC. That brought like hundreds of thousands of people out. There have been protests all around the country for Black Lives Matter, and those were organized even more quickly. They were organized in a matter of days. But definitely, I think we can see that. But during COVID, yeah, so kind of replicating in-person things, it really had to do with being able to manage, like when you have a large event, you want to have as many people on, just being kind of deciding on what type of format makes the most sense. Sometimes it makes sense. And we use Zoom a lot when we have larger events. So when we have, whether it's going to be a panelist style, where most people are just attendees, so you can't see their cameras, they can't speak, versus when you have like a larger event, you want everyone to kind of engage. We had, and we were still doing like open mics, where you'd have like 30, 40 people come on and share poetry, play music, whatever they might want to do. So just kind of deciding the best format, deciding on kind of what the purpose of each event would be, because it's different from like kind of going to a rally where you could be there for hours and it's like, oh, this is great, this is fine, like I'm engaged, I'm stimulated, all that. But when you're at home and you're kind of like in your room in front of your computer, no one is really trying to sit in front of the computer for hours. So you really have to kind of make the best use of your time. So kind of maximizing the hour or two that you might have. And we really kept it around an hour, because I know personally after an hour, my attention span just like completely just drops. So I mean, I totally understand. So we try to keep it around an hour, and then just making the best of that hour as much as we can. So have it be very structured, and have room in that structure for like kind of free time, in the sense that we can kind of see if people are willing to like kind of converse. Might take a few tries for people to actually do it. So yeah, just making sure that we have a very clear purpose with everything that we're doing. Everything's very structured, and we're not having like any awkward moments where we're like waiting for something to happen. So yeah, and I think all of that also comes with like just kind of experience almost, in the sense that once you've been on like 3 or 4 events, like, oh, like this is a thing. And then once you have like a lagging issue or something, someone can like turn their mic on and just start like talking about something random. And that's usually how we have it. We'd have like multiple people on, like all of us would be ready to kind of like pick up the lag if there is anything. So just kind of making sure that there's always something going on, that we're maximizing our short amount of time, and that we're kind of being frequent with everything that we're doing. I think when we first started quarantine, we used to do like screenings of different shows or movies or whatever. And we did them like multiple times a week, and we have different things kind of happening, and people would just join on, hop on. They kind of come and go. And then at the end, we'd have like 20 or 30, 40 people left, and we'd kind of just like have a chat and like kind of discuss kind of whether it be the film or whatever we watch, or like how to get involved. So also like having a little shameless plug for yourself in there also doesn't hurt. But yeah, that's kind of how we manage that.
So Aaron, I want to come back around to you. Whoops, did I cut somebody off? No, okay. Aaron, I want to come back around to you if we can. Your role as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for APS is to provide learning and working environments that are more inclusive for everyone. And you're really hoping that students get involved in social action in our community. How does cultivating media literacy, which is really kind of what we're talking about today, how does that ensure students are both good consumers as well as producers of social media? How does that support your mission?
Sure. So one of the things that's very important with APS is student voice. Hopefully y'all can hear me, but student voice is very important to us. In order for us to better be able to support you in your learning, to make sure that our curriculum is representative of all students and inclusive, we need to have social activism to be able to hear from you. We need to know your voice. We need to know what it is that you are inquiring about. We need to know what it is that are important to you all. As I always say, that now we're moving to a stage to where culture is so important, even more so than anything else. And what is your culture? And culture has changed. However, our education system has not maybe as far as advanced with identifying what culture is for our students. So we need to hear your voice to know what it is that is going to engage you. How can we make our curriculum more representative of who you are and what you are about, so that we can start having these conversations in school? as we know that there's been incidents around, with racism in our school buildings. How can we better utilize your voice and your talents to be able to be an anti-racist school system? So how can we use media and use your voice within the schools? Because you all are pioneers. You all, it's your time. It's not our time anymore. We're beyond that time, but it's your time. It's your time to have your voices heard. It's your time to be seen and to know that we're listening to you. And that's very important because active listening is a verb. And we want to make sure that we're listening to who you are and what it is that you want so that we can respond to you. As we're moving now into school, then we know, and into the school season, we know that we're in this new virtual space that we didn't anticipate that we're going to be in. So how can we give you a platform to be able to utilize your talents? And I think that's what Let's Talk is about. It's just being able to open that up, open the venue up around literacy and social literacy, around collaboration, communication, and critical learning skills. So this is really about expanding your critical learning, expanding your thought, having you engage and have a platform to being able to do that. And I think we have some great opportunities here, and the partnerships that we're building with you, Lynn, and Arlington Media, to be able to allow our students to be able to take advantage of what it is that we need them to take advantage of today, to be able to build the inclusive community that we want to build, and the professional learning center and professional learning community that we have. So I'll turn it back over to you, but I hope that answers your question in terms of the why.
No, that's great. And it's a great segue for me. So thank you for that. I have something I want to offer and extend here to our participants. And I'm involved with this organization, as Aaron said, Arlington Independent Media, AIM or AIM. And AIM is the parent organization for WERA, which is the radio station that my show, Choose to Be Curious, plays on. And I had never done anything with radio until I went to AIM and got trained. And that's what AIM does, is it trains people to produce their own media, whether it's radio, video, television, something in between, and then provides platforms, public access TV stations, streaming platforms, a radio station that then becomes podcasts. It provides that training, those platforms, and support for people to really make their voices heard. And so I would love to see people who are participating in this series, and I hope that people come back for more of these to kind of explore together some of these ideas. But if there's something you're like Blaine or Yolande and something just spoke to you and you're like, I got to do something with this, I want to invite you to think that one of the things you might do with that is actually build some skills, get a little bit of training, and then think about creating a radio or video program about those issues, about those things that you care about. And if you want to start small, we have what are called public service announcements, PSAs, that are like ads, but they're not for commercial products. They're for events and activities, for nonprofit organizations, for the causes that you care about, that you can work with me and others at AIM to record PSAs, and we'll put them on the radio. We'll put them on television. And it's a way for you, in a small way, you don't have to start big and bold. It doesn't have to be a whole website like Blaine, good heavens. It can just be something small, 30 seconds, to say, this is something that matters to me. I hope you show up for this event, or this is a cause. I'd like you to think more about it. You can do, as Yolande says, do the research and sort of figure out, what more do I want to know here? So if you think you might be interested, you're not committing to anything. You just think you might be interested. You just have a question about it. I'm not asking for a commitment. Just send me an email at choosetobecurious@gmail.com, and we'll figure out something. I hope I get you on the radio. So I want to encourage you to do some follow-up on this. A little bit of homework. I mean, it's a school system, right? So there's going to be some kind of an assignment, right? But mostly it's that we're curious to know if this session has actually made an impact. This is what Eric was talking about, right? Is you really want to think about, what's the impact you want to make? What's the mark you want to leave? So we wanted to leave a mark. We wanted to make an impact with this. So in a week, we'd like you to email us with an example of some social influencer. It could be an athlete, could be a celebrity, but it could be somebody on a much more modest level, somebody that you think is an influencer. Who is that person? What makes them an influencer? Do you think they're using their influencing platform in a constructive and responsible way? And why or why not? Because it's a responsibility. It's actually a pretty big responsibility to have a big platform, particularly like some of the celebrities, or even if you've just got a cause that you're working behind. Like, are people doing that well? And as you bring your curiosity and your critical analysis to it, what do you think? You're the judge, right? Nobody else matters. You're the judge of this. Does this matter to you? If so, why? If not, why not? What might you do differently with this? Because we want you, ultimately, I mean, I think this is Aaron's goal with this series, right? You want people to be influencers themselves, an impact player, someone who brings others along to make a difference for a cause that matters to you. So Aaron, I'm going to turn it back to you, but I'm also going to say to our students, thank you for coming. Just because you didn't ask a question in this hour doesn't mean that the door for those questions is closed. So you can write to Aaron. I'm going to volunteer Aaron as well. You can write to me at choosetobecurious@gmail.com, and we will answer your questions, connect you with the people that you need to be connected to. And I really hope some of you are going to show up and work with me on PSAs at least. So I'm going to get back to you, Aaron.
So I want to open it up, of course, the last couple of minutes in case we do have some questions from our students. What I will say to this is that your brand is very important, especially you in high school. What you don't know is that colleges, or what you may know, is that colleges are looking to see who you follow on social media. They're looking to see what you post on social media. They're looking to make sure that you're a positive influence, and as well as when you go into future employment, all those employers are looking on social media. So your brand is very important. Who you're connected to is very important. Your network that you're building right now is important. As a great man told me that I'm only as great as my network. But what he also told me too is it's not about so much about who I know, but it's about who knows you. So you want to make sure that the people that know you know that you're a shining star, know that you're bright. And we also want to promote social activism within your school. So make sure that cyberbullying is very rampant these days. Do not use social media to bully other students, to make sure that you're doing it responsibly. And if you see something, say something, because we're here for you and we want to support you. But we also want to know, we also want to know that we want you to be responsible with your social action, your interaction, and do something that is a benefit and a value. Make sure that your name stays where it needs to stay in terms of integrity and inclusivity, which are the goals as well as the core values of APS. I thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank our esteemed, panel here that have lent their time to be able to be a part of this conversation. And this is first of many conversations. This will not be the last. I promise you that. So if you don't have questions, you can always reach out to me. But we're here for you. We're here to support you. And again, come to the next session, because it'll only become to get better and bolder with our conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.